that people are saying now, how come you didn't raise any questions about the weapons of mass destruction, the connection to Al-Qaeda, whatever it is? We did. Did we raise them as forcefully as we should have? Did we raise them night after night after night after night? No, we didn't.
They're not journalists. They're cheerleaders for the Pentagon. They're cheerleaders for the White House. They were cheerleaders for this war. You know, we've rightly pointed a finger at President Bush and Tony Blair in Great Britain for, you know, lying about the case for war, for saying that they had solid intelligence information that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction. It now turns out that they had no such intelligence information. They either made it up, misrepresented it, or otherwise deceived the electorate, their respective constituencies. But the big question is, in regards to the media, where were the American media to ask these questions, to demand answers of the politicians in the build-up to war? That's the job of the media.
I think it is an impossible job for the press. The press, reporters are not weapons inspectors who have been granted access by a host country or by a military organization of the United States to go around searching for biological and chemical and nuclear weapons. It's an absurd proposition that the press would be able to find these. I think the press reported on the debate very well.
I found the coverage shameful and appalling. And I'm surprised that in retrospect, anyone would defend it.
We didn't have sources inside Iraq who could search the whole country in a comprehensive way. The weapons inspectors who'd been in Iraq, the whole litany of them, none of them were saying there are no weapons of mass destruction here. We completely disagree with this logic. They were saying we don't know.
The media was as guilty as the White House and as the Prime Minister's office in Great Britain of promulgating a lie. And that's what they were doing. They were lying about the threat posed by Iraq. They ignored any information, even from the most credible sources, which argued against Iraq having weapons of mass destruction.
Nowhere in that crucial period between September 7th and October 12th did the American press stand up to this tidal wave of nonsense. And again, the great exception is the Washington Times, me, and Scott Ritter.
You know, I was a defender of the truth, and I'll stand by my record regarding Iraq without any embarrassment. I was right. I told the truth. I put the facts out there. And yet, for telling the truth, I was denigrated. I was attacked. My patriotism was called into question.
We don't have an agenda to try to discredit or credit Scott Ritter. Our job is exactly what you just said. It is to present the facts, and let the viewer see what, let the viewer decide what to do with those facts.
Have you heard anything about Scott Ritter? Has anybody borne him aloft on their shoulders and celebrated his prescience on the war? Has he been permitted to say, "I told you so," on all those national TV shows that ridiculed him and called him a friend of Saddam, on the take from Iraq, and so on and so forth? It's just astonishing.
I think everybody began to get an inkling, and but of course a lot of them bought into it because they began tying it up with these tremendous weapons, this cache, these arsenals that Saddam Hussein had. No proof except that Colin Powell, undoubtedly, when he laid his prestige on the line at the United Nations, people believed in him. He had tremendous stature in our country. And some very, very professional journalists said that's when they bought into the whole argument that we should go to war.
When Iraq finally admitted having these weapons in 1995, the quantities were vast. Less than a teaspoon of dry anthrax, a little bit about this amount. This is just about the amount of a teaspoon. Less than a teaspoonful of dry anthrax in an envelope shut down the United States Senate in the fall of 2001. Iraq declared 8,500 liters of anthrax, but UNSCOM estimates that Saddam Hussein could have produced 25,000 liters. If concentrated into this dry form, this amount would be enough to fill tens upon tens of thousands of teaspoons, and Saddam Hussein has not verifiably accounted for even 1 teaspoonful of this deadly material.
By and large, the entire American news media swallowed that fish. They were like seals in a zoo, and Powell was dropping fish in their mouth, and they almost without exception, and I made a list, I don't have it in front of me, but a list of all of the leading newspapers, all of the leading news networks didn't question that presentation.
Colin Powell is a very bad actor. He's a hypocrite. He's a liar. If you go back to My Lai, he was one of the officers responsible for investigating what the Americal division was doing, and he managed not to find anything, which you'll read in the Figaro, but you will not read in the American press, which did a very, very fine story on this a few days ago. He lied in front of the UN Security Council on behalf of his masters in the White House, and now he says, oh, I'm so appalled to find out that we were lied to. Chalabi lied to us. They misinformed us.
Could we have hit the we don't know question harder? I'm sure we could have. I think everyone regrets that that wasn't done better.
In fact, I would say in this whole run-up to the war, the American people, at least I got so much, well, 1, hate mail, but 2, many messages saying, where is the American press? Because people are thinking, too, and they hear what they're saying at the White House, and they say, well, why don't you ask about this? Why don't you ask this? So they felt we weren't tough enough. In fact, they felt we were asking too many softballs and playing along when we should have been much more inquiring. We really laid down on the job.
It's not the job of the press to stop a country or a president from going to war. That's the job of the people of the country.
At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
Here was the Gulf War, which was a huge military success. And the Pentagon suddenly looked around and said, hey, we did great, right? Where are the pictures? Oh, that's right. We wouldn't allow the press to go with us, right? And a lot of the generals who were commanding that operation came out and said, you know, that was a mistake.
The Pentagon had learned their lesson. They subsequently invented this sort of new tactic, which was to embed television as well as print journalists within the military forces themselves. They have become embedded, which means, in a sense, practically sleeping with the army, therefore becoming the new instruments of the Pentagon.
The brilliance of the embedding program, and these people are brilliant at public relations and at manipulation. That's what they know. They don't know politics. They don't know foreign languages, they don't know anything about history, but they really know public relations. That's what they're good at, advertising and public relations. And somebody, I don't know who had the brilliant idea to do embedding, somebody had this brilliant idea because they knew that self-censorship would achieve most of what overt censorship achieved in the 1991 Gulf War.